But no matter how hard I tried, the tears finally spilled over. I cried quietly, my body trembling under the weight of it all. There I stood, a heavily pregnant woman, belly aching, surrounded by strangers coming and going from the hospital. And in that cold, indifferent world, I cried until I had no more tears left in me. Daniel didn't come home that night. Instead, he only sent a text. Hey Olivia, I'm working late tonight and crashing into the office. It's getting cold and rainy, so don't forget to close the window before bed. Love you always, your husband. I read the message without feeling anything. In the past, I would have worried, replied, or waited for Daniel. Now, I didn't even bother to respond. I used to think I was the happiest woman in the world because I had the best husband. But reality hit me hard. It had all been a ridiculous facade. People's hearts are hidden behind their ribs, and their lies are scribbled on paper. A few days later, I received the divorce papers my lawyer had drafted. I printed them out, signed my name, and started packing up my things to move back to my mom's place. Just as I was getting ready to leave, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was Kara. We met at a cafe downstairs. Kara arrived with an air of confidence, sitting across from me with a smug smile, a supermarket shopping bag by her side. 3 months pregnant and balancing on thin high heels, she looked at me as if she had already won. I thought you wouldn't come, she said, a smug lilt in her voice. After all, you never replied to my messages. I smiled calmly. My heart was steady, not a flicker of emotion breaking through. Why wouldn't I come? I haven't done anything shameful that I need to hide. I leaned back, still smiling. Besides, Daniel and I are legally married, so I have nothing to hide. Unlike some people who, no matter how hard they try, will always be the hidden third. You, she snapped, but I cut her off again. Oh, and thank you, by the way, I said, my voice steady, for sending me all the evidence of your little affair with Daniel. Collecting all that would have been much harder on my own. I smiled, this time more dismissively. So, this coffee's on me. I placed some cash under my cup, stood up slowly, and rested my hand on my belly. What do you mean by that? She asked through clenched teeth as she grabbed my arm. It means I don't want him anymore, I replied, pulling my arm free. If you want him, he's all yours. Her eyes narrowed, and she threw my arm aside angrily. What game are you playing now? Don't think I'm buying this for a second. The force of her shove sent me stumbling backward, and I fell to the floor. At that moment, it felt like a knife had ripped through my belly. Pain shot through me, and I felt my body convulsed. Blood poured from between my legs, and I screamed in terror. Save my baby. I barely registered Kara fleeing in panic. Forcing myself to stay calm, I asked the cafe staff to call an ambulance. By the time they lifted me into the ambulance, my dress was drenched in blood. As my consciousness began to slip away, I heard a nurse asking for my phone password. I unlocked it for her, and they called my emergency contact, my husband, 6 times. Finally, he picked up on the last call. Olivia, there's an emergency at work, Daniel's sharp and impatient voice said. We're in the middle of a critical meeting. I'll call you back later, okay? Be good. The line went dead, but I could hear Kara's voice clearly in the background. I turned away from the nurse's pitiful eyes and wiped the blood from my hands with my dress. My fingers shook as I took the phone and dialed my mom. I had to sound calm. Mom, I'm going into labor. I swallowed hard, fighting through the pain. My mom replied, don't panic, okay? Just listen. Go to my place, grab my ID and the hospital bag, and take a cab to Riverside General. Whatever the doctors tell you to do, do it. I'm fine, Mom. Really, don't worry about me, I reassured her before quickly hanging up. Right then, the contractions hit me like a tidal wave, and I screamed. Cold sweat poured down my face, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I used the last bit of strength I had to grab the doctor's hand. Please, save my baby, I gasped. I couldn't lose my baby, not again. When I was 9 months pregnant, I discovered that my husband, Daniel, was having an affair. He had been sending money to another woman every month and had become increasingly dismissive of me. After confirming his infidelity, I decided to gather evidence and prepare for a divorce. But when I confronted the other woman, she pushed me, causing a fall that put both my impending labor and my baby's life at risk. Cold sweat dripped down my face, and my whole body trembled uncontrollably. As my consciousness began to fade, I grasped the doctor's hand with the last bit of strength I had left. Please, save my baby, I gasped. I couldn't bear to lose my child. Not again. Never again. My consciousness wavered in and out. At times, I thought I heard my mother crying. Other times, I heard the doctor calmly urging, keep up with the stitches. As the cold sensation of the scalpel traced across my abdomen, I found myself under the stark operating lights, slipping back into memories of a time long ago. Daniel and I had just graduated from university then. We were poor, renting the cheapest basement apartment. No matter how late we worked, we'd cook together in a cramped hallway kitchen. Just a bowl of plain noodles would satisfy us both. I once glanced at a dress in a store window for a few seconds longer than usual, and Daniel went 2 months without breakfast to save money and buy it for me. When he gave me the dress, I had shouted at him, "Skipping breakfast? Are you crazy? What if you ruin your stomach? And why did you waste money on such an expensive dress?" He had held me and swore, "My Olivia deserves the best in this world. I'll work hard to buy you all the good things." As he climbed the corporate ladder, he did buy me more and more luxury items, but none could compare to that simple dress. Then, the man who once claimed to love me found someone else. Even in my fading consciousness, I felt such sadness that tears streamed down my face. Amidst the blurry chaos, I heard a piercing, unfamiliar cry. My heart swelled with mixed emotions of sourness and relief. Struggling to open my eyes, I choked out, "Is my baby okay?" "Rest assured, Mama, you have a healthy little princess," the doctor replied. At that moment, I finally allowed myself to close my eyes in peace. I woke to the sterile scent of disinfectant, emerging from the dense darkness. When I opened my eyes, I saw my mother's tear-stained, red eyes. Before I could speak, her tears began to fall in torrents. "My poor Olivia," she sobbed. I instinctively reached for my flat stomach, searching frantically. "Your baby's right here," she said softly. The tiny child lay nestled in her arms, peaceful and serene, like a little angel. "You two were lucky. God was watching over you both," my mother whispered as she gently placed the baby by my side. "But the doctors said you went through hell this time, losing so much blood. You'll need to rest and take care of the wound, don't overdo it." She deliberately avoided mentioning Daniel, knowing full well that her son-in-law had disappeared all night while her daughter battled life and death. My mother had always been a smart woman. I carefully kissed my daughter's tiny fingers and quietly told my mom, "I've decided to divorce him." My mother choked up. "You don't need to explain, Olivia. I know how much you've suffered." She grasped my hand, tears flowing freely. "When you went into the operating room, I kept calling that bastard. The phone rang until it switched off, and he never picked up. I thought he was busy with work. But when you and your daughter came out of surgery, I saw him, with another woman, at the hospital, getting her checked up. If you didn't still need me, I would have killed those two right then and there." I squeezed my mother's hand to comfort her, feeling strangely at peace. My mother had raised me alone, gentle in appearance but with an indomitable spirit. No matter how old I grew, I would always be her little girl, the one she would fiercely protect. "Olivia, I raised you by myself, and I can help you raise your daughter too. Do what you need to do. No explanations needed," she said. And she was right. Losing Daniel wouldn't upend my world. He was just a man, after all. By evening, Daniel finally showed up. He burst into the room, visibly distressed. "Olivia, how are you feeling?" he asked, falling to his knees beside my bed and slapping himself hard across the face. "I'm a terrible husband. I wasn't there for you during childbirth. Hit me, curse me, do whatever you want. The company had an emergency, and my phone died after that. I had no idea." I cut him off, tired of his theatrics. "Let's get a divorce, Daniel." "Divorce? Why? It doesn't have to come to that. Olivia, listen, let me explain. Last night, it really was a work emergency. I'd had enough." Daniel, cut the lies. "Kara, 29, lives in the Jehwa district, 3 months pregnant. You were with her last night at the hospital. You cheated, Daniel, and it disgusts me." His face turned ghostly pale as he stared at me in horror. He clutched at my hands. "Olivia, I was momentarily out of my mind. I never intended to divorce you. I was going to break it off with her, but when she told me she was pregnant, I didn't know what to do. It's a life, after all. But you have to believe me, I've always loved you." Right on cue, my mother walked in with our freshly awakened daughter. Daniel's eyes lit up like he had found salvation. "Honey, think about our child. For her sake, please forgive me this once." My mother dodged his attempt to hold the baby, calmly placing the child beside me. Then, without hesitation, she picked up the chair next to the bed and swung it at Daniel's head. He ducked just in time, but the chair landed squarely on his shoulder with a heavy thud. My mother raised the chair again, and Daniel, covering his head, shrieked as he bolted for the door. The chair crashed against the doorframe with a deafening clang. Over the next few days, Daniel loitered outside the door, occasionally trying to entertain our daughter through the window. After my mother smashed a hot water bottle at him, I asked her to take the baby for a walk in the sun and let Daniel in. He looked thinner, his cheeks hollowed out. "Olivia, for the sake of our child, forgive me. I swear, I'll never betray you again. This whole thing will be just a small hiccup in our long life together. You'll see." I watched his smug expression with disgust. "Daniel, I have proof of your affair, bank transfers and electronic records. If you don't agree to an amicable divorce, we'll see each other in court." His bravado disappeared in an instant, and he frantically grabbed my hand. "Olivia, I'm scum. I cheated, and I deserve to die 1,000 deaths. But we have a daughter now. You can't let her grow up without a father. Give me one more chance, and I'll change. I swear I will." I calmly pulled my hand away. "There are no more chances, Daniel, because you disgust me. I raised my hand to silence his coming protest. If I'm not mistaken, you're currently up for a promotion, right? District manager. Imagine how the company would view you if our divorce got ugly. At those words, Daniel, who had always prided himself on his image, dropped to his knees and sobbed uncontrollably. I remained calm as I delivered my final blow. The divorce papers are signed and in the study. You'd better sign them before my mother gets back. You know her temper. If you don't want another beating, leave. In the days that followed, I focused on my recovery. After being discharged, I moved into a postpartum care center. The strict visitor rules and the burly security guards kept Daniel out, giving me some peace at last. One day, I received a beautifully wrapped gift box, expecting a gift for my daughter from a friend. I eagerly unwrapped it, only to be hit by the overwhelming stench of blood. Behind me, the nurse screamed, and moments later, my daughter woke, crying in fear.